everybody here tonight. We are going to look at a lot of prophecy tonight. Actually, it's going to be a panorama of prophecy. We're going to be laying a little groundwork for a study that we're going to have next week. But I wanted to, as we get started tonight, look at several of these prophecies or beasts in the prophecy of the book of Daniel. We studied our first night some things about prophecy, and we looked at the purpose of prophecy. And I want us to go and look at what Peter tells us in 2 Peter 1, verses 20 and 21. He says, knowing this first, that no prophecy of the Scripture is of any what? Private interpretation. We studied that the very first night. We're not to put our own interpretations on these things of prophecy, because the Bible will interpret itself. For the prophecy came not in old time by the will of man, but holy men of God spake as they were moved by the Holy Ghost. So what we find is the Bible comes directly to us through the prophets, which were God's channel, and God chose those individuals that would record His messages to us. The purpose of prophecy, first of all, is to see where we are in the time frame of things. This is sort of a review from the first evening. Second, we are to see where we're going. These prophecies not only let us see where we are, but it lets us see where we're headed and what lies ahead. The third thing is, it tells us what we should be doing to get ready for what's coming. And then number 4, how do we get ready? What must we do to prepare for what lies ahead? So these are some of the things we've been studying. Now in the book of Daniel, in the 7th chapter, Daniel sees these 4 beasts come up out of the sea. The things that were in the posters that we gave out tonight. These 4 beasts we're going to see represent 4 kingdoms. And the 4 kingdoms are the same 4 kingdoms that were presented in Daniel chapter 2 with King Nebuchadnezzar's dream. And we'll see the parallel tonight. You see, prophecy is repetitive. In other words, God will give a prophecy here, and then a little further down, He'll give another prophecy that builds upon the other one, and then another one a lot of times that will build upon the previous 2. And we're going to see in our studies in Daniel over the next week or so that the one that He gave us in chapter 2 with those 4 kingdoms, He gives us those same 4 kingdoms tonight and adds something new. And then a little later we're going to see He adds something new to that. But each one of them you can see how they all fit together. So take your Bibles tonight. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7. The 7th chapter of Daniel. We're going to read the first 3 verses there. Daniel chapter 7 and the first 3 verses. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream, and he told the sum of the matter. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the 4 winds of heaven strove upon the great sea, and 4 great beasts came up from the sea, diverse or different one from another. So Daniel says, in the first year of King Belshazzar, I had this dream. And in this dream, this wind was striving or blowing mightily on the sea. Great waves he probably saw. And in the midst of this storm, up came 4 beasts out of this water. What we're going to do tonight is let the Bible tell us what these are. Because people have told me, oh, well, the lion, I've heard preachers say this too, on television and radio for years. The lion represents England. The bear represents Russia. You know why they say that? Because the flag of Russia is a bear flag, which shows the one of California. So why don't they choose California? The lion is the emblem of England. We're going to see the dragon. They tried to say that was China, but we'll let God tell us tonight what these kingdoms are. But first of all, he says they were all different from each other. Different kingdoms, different beasts coming up out of the sea. As we look in the book of Revelation, we find where it says, He said unto me, the waters which thou sawest where the horse sits are peoples, multitudes, what? Nations and tongues. Water in Bible prophecy represents what? People, kingdoms, nations. And so as this battle or this storm is going on among the nations, Daniel says he saw 4 beasts come up. Let's take a look and we'll see how this works. In Jeremiah 49, God says, Thus saith the Lord of hosts, Behold, I will break the bow of Elam, the chief of their might, and upon Elam I will bring the 4 what? The winds from the 4 quarters of the heaven, and will scatter them toward all those winds, and there shall be no nation whether the outcasts of Elam shall not come. For I will cause Elam to be dismayed before their enemies, and before them that seek their life, and I will bring evil upon them, even my fierce anger, saith the Lord, and I will send the sword after them, till I have consumed them. You see, the winds represent the war and the strife and the battle. We're going to see a little later on where God says He's got angels holding back the 4 winds, or the winds of war and strife, until His people are sealed. Again, in Jeremiah chapter 51, Thus saith the Lord, Behold, I will raise up against Babylon and against them that dwell in the midst of them, that rise up against me a destroying wind. And I will send into Babylon fanners, that they shall fan her, and shall empty her land. For in the day of trouble they shall be against her round about. Against him that bendeth, let the archer bend his bow. And against him that lifteth himself up against his brigandine. And spare ye not her young men, destroy ye utterly all her host. Thus the slain shall fall in the land of the Chaldeans, and they that are thrust through in her streets. Winds are sent, war and strife, death and destruction. And so this is what Jeremiah, or what Daniel was seeing in vision. So let's pick it up and see what now the beasts are. In Daniel chapter 7, go to verse 17 here. These great beasts which are for what? Kings, which shall rise out of the earth. Watch now, drop down into verse 23. And he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th what? Kingdom. So these beasts are representing various kingdoms of the world. And so as this war and strife are taking place among the nations of the world, 4 nations arise. And Daniel was watching these rise up. So seas represent people, wind represents war or strife, and the beast represent kingdoms. Now these kingdoms, let's take a look at what they are and what they were representing, what these beasts are that he saw. Verse 4, the first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings. And I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. Behold, another beast, and a second like a bear, and it had raised itself up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. They said thus unto it, Arise and devour much flesh. And after this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. And the beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse, or different from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. How many toes were on that image the other night? How many toes are on people's feet usually? 10. And here's 10 horns now. And I considered the horns, and behold, there came up among them another little horn, before whom there were 3 of the first horns plucked up by the roots. And behold, this horn had eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking great things. How would you like to have a dream like that? Boy, I wouldn't care to have one like that. But Daniel now He rises, and now he knows what these beasts represent. And he wasn't puzzled. He knew all of these things. And now each of those kingdoms are there. But this time, can anybody tell me what was added that we haven't seen yet? We've seen the first kingdom was Babylon before. Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, the 10 toes. What's new tonight? A little horn comes up. Something new is introduced, and this little one tears up 3 of those previous kingdoms. We're going to be looking at that tonight. So the first was like a lion, and it had eagle's wings, and I watched till its wings were plucked off. And it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand on the 2 feet like a man, and the man's heart was given to it. Which of those posters was first chosen tonight by the children? Remember? The winged lion, wasn't it? It's a magnificent looking creature. It was used extensively in Babylonian artwork. And this winged lion represented the glory and the power of Babylon. But it says that this beast was going to change. It's going to have its wings plucked. But not only that, it's going to have its heart changed. It's going to receive a man's heart. What would you say is the most brave between a man and a lion? Before you answer, let me ask you this question. If you were going home tonight and you went around a corner and there was a lion standing there, which one of you think would run?
Me?
You see, remember King Richard of England? He was called Richard the Lion-Hearted. And here in the beginning, this glorious kingdom of Babylon was a kingdom to be admired by all of the world. But in that last kingdom, that last night when that kingdom fell, remember the night we looked at that? What happened to the last king of Babylon? What was he doing before he was killed? Feasting. And the hand wrote on the wall, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. And when when Belshazzar saw that, what happened to his knees? It says his knees smote one against the other. His knees started knocking. And his loins were loose. He had that fear deep down inside that made him almost want to collapse on the floor. Anything but lion-hearted the night that Babylon fell. And so this was the first beast. As a matter of fact, the Bible even refers to Babylon as a lion. It says the lion has come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of nations is on his way. He has gone forth from his place to make your land desolate, and your cities will be laid waste without inhabitants. Jeremiah said that. Jeremiah was the prophet at the time that Babylon came and carried all of the Jews away into captivity and left the land desolate. And he said, it's a lion that's coming after us. Now, the lion was to be changed, and it was now to pass away, and another beast was to arise. And the lion is the same as the golden head of Daniel 2. It was Babylon who ruled from 605 to 539. But he said, suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, and it raised up on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth. And it said thus to it, arise and devour much flesh. What kingdom did we see followed Babylon last time? The Medes and the Persians. Here we have a little more. In 2, the Medes and the Persians, the 2 arms joined in the chest to make one empire. Now we get a little more insight. This bear, which represents the same kingdom, raised itself up on one side. One of those 2 was to become more powerful than the other. Anybody here ever heard of a Median rug? But we've all heard of Persian rugs, haven't we? You see, the Medes begin to diminish, and the Persians begin to ascend. Remember, the first king when Babylon fell to sit on the throne was Darius the Mede. And then Cyrus the Persian eventually took over when Darius died. And so it says the bear raised itself up on one side, and the higher came up last. You see how God begins to add these little intricate details. The bear had 3 teeth in its mouth, and it was told to go and devour much flesh. And those 3 teeth represent the kingdoms that had to be conquered before Medo-Persia became the power. Libya, Egypt, and Lydia. And then now they had Babylon, and they ruled the world. And so we had all of this information. We studied this, how Cyrus turned the river Euphrates out of its course, and they went in under the walls of the city. The gates were left open. We saw the prophecy from Isaiah last time, where 150 years before it ever happened, God said who was going to destroy them and what his name was and how he was going to get in. The gates left unlocked, the rivers moved out of their way. And so we find here the Medes and the Persians that were represented by the golden arms are represented by the bear, ruling from 539 to 331 BC. This is to me an amazing creature here. Because after this I looked, and there was another, like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. And the beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. You know, a leopard is a pretty fast cat, isn't it? You put 4 wings on a leopard, you know what you get? A super fast kitty. The quickest kitty you ever saw. He's just moving right along. Now, what was the kingdom we saw the other night that followed the Medes and the Persians? Greece. And we saw that Greece had at its head Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great, my friends, crossed the Hellespont from Europe into Asia in 334. And by 331, he had conquered the world, and he's a 25-year-old boy. Now, 25-year-old people today themselves don't think they're boys, but when you're my age or some others' ages in here, there's some around here that might even think I'm a boy. This 25-year-old Alexander the Great became the conqueror of the world. And he had nothing else to conquer. Now, he dies in a drunken stupor. And when he died, his kingdom was up for grabs. What's going to happen? His mother wanted it, but that didn't work. He had a half-wit brother. He couldn't get it. The generals tried to fight for it, and wars ensued until finally this kingdom of Alexander's now is divided between his 4 generals. Okay? This is divided between his 4 generals. And we see this in quite a lot of depth in this in the 11th chapter of Daniel. Seleucus was one, and he got the biggest portion of it. Lysimachus, he got the smallest portion. Cassander, he got one that's smallest like Lysimachus, and the other big one was Ptolemy. Now, most of those people, those names seem strange to you. But I can mention a Ptolemy, and every one of you will know who she was. The last of them, her name was Cleopatra. And the Ptolemies ruled Egypt. History shows us that the victors divided the empire into kingdoms for themselves. Seleucus received Asia from Phrygia to India, Western Asia Minor, and Thrace fell to Lysimachus. Ptolemy became king of Egypt, and Cassander, already governor of Macedon, was recognized as sovereign. In this way, 4 kingdoms arose from the empire. Complete historical fulfillment of what the prophecy said. 4 kingdoms there. Okay, so Greece also ruled from 331 to 168 BC. Now, after this, I saw in a night vision, and behold, a 4th beast. This one is dreadful and terrible. It's exceeding strong, and it had huge, what kind of teeth? What was the 4th kingdom in Daniel 2 made out of? Iron. Here now the teeth, the things that devour, the iron teeth. It was devouring and breaking in pieces and trampling the residue with its feet. And it was different from all the beasts that were before it. And it had 10 horns. This is the legs of iron and the feet of iron and clay. The 10 toes, the 10 horns, and this beast with great iron teeth. An awesome beast, also represented the kingdom of Rome. The iron monarchy of Rome, we saw it was called last time. Rome ruled from 168 to 476 AD. It ruled longer than any other empire had ever existed. A long time of ruling. But Rome was also to pass into the dust. And so as we look that this beast was diverse or different, it was because it was larger. The Roman Empire was massive. It was stronger. It endured longer, and it was both political and religious. Rome eventually, we saw last time in the legs, divided into Eastern Rome, Western Rome, or to pagan Rome and papal Rome. And so it was a political, religious power as well. But what really grabbed Daniel's attention was these 10 horns, and that little horn that came up out of them especially. He says the 10 horns are 10 kings who shall arise from this kingdom. And we saw who they were last time as we studied. Those 10 kingdoms that went on to make up the 10 nations of Israel, of Europe. And 3 of those 10 were eventually destroyed, the Heruli, the Vandals, and the Ostrogoths. And they were destroyed in those religious, political wars. And in March 538, the last of those 3 were destroyed. And now there's an undisputed little horn power that is ruling. I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one coming up among them, before whom 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. An awesome description. So the 10 kings were, and the little horn, the 10 kings came up in 476 when Rome fell, and the little horn now came up in the midst of those 10, and by 538, it was the undisputed power in the Western world. If there's any history students here, you probably already figured out what this is, but I'm going to give you some points tonight. This little horn that came up, who or what was this horn that had such power as to destroy other nations? Let's take our Bibles and go watch what happens here. Daniel chapter 7, and let's start with verse 16 now. I came near unto one of them that stood by and asked him the truth of all this. So he told me and made me know the interpretation of the things. The great beasts which are 4 kings which shall arise out of the earth. But the saints of the Most High, this is the good news, friends, watch this. But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and shall possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. We saw that the other week too, on the first night. Then I would know the truth of the fourth beast, which is diverse from all the others, exceeding dreadful, whose teeth were of iron and his nails of brass, which devoured and brake in pieces and stamped the residue with his feet. And of the 10 horns that were in his head, and of the other which came up, before whom 3 fell, even of that horn that had eyes, and a mouth that spake very great things, whose look was more stout than his fellows. I beheld the same horn made war with the same, and prevailed against them, until the Ancient of Days came, and judgment was given to the saints of the Most High, and the time came that the saints possessed the kingdom. Thus he said, the 4th beast shall be the 4th kingdom upon the earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down and break it in pieces. And the 10 horns out of this kingdom are 10 kings that shall arise, and another shall rise after them, and he shall be diverse from the first, and he shall subdue 3 kings. Watch this next verse. And he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand until a time and times and dividing of times. That's an awesome description, friends. We're going to spend a lot of time looking at this next week sometime. But I want you to see what we've seen so far. It was to come up among the 10 horns. It was to come up after they were already there, to uproot 3 of them. It's different than the first 10. It was to uproot 3 of those first 10. And it would be a persecuting power that would persecute the saints of the Most High. And it would rule for a time, times, and a half a time. Now this time, times, and half a time is awesome. Verse 25 again, look at it. He shall speak great words against the Most High, shall wear out the saints of the Most High, think to change times and laws. They shall be given into his hand until the time, times, and the dividing of time. This is the most significant time prophecy in the Bible. Times, and the dividing of time. In Daniel chapter 7 and verse 25 it's referred to. In Daniel 12 verse 7 it is referred to again. And in Revelation 12 verse 14 it is referred to again. 3 references to this time, times, and the dividing of time. But there's 7 references to this time prophecy itself in the Bible. In Revelation 13:5 it's put this way. Power was given unto him to continue 42 months. So how is 42 months and the time, times, and dividing of time the same thing? We're going to see that tonight. We have 42 months referred to in Revelation 11:2 and in Revelation 13:5. Then we find the woman or the church in Revelation 12:6 fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared of God that they should feed her there 1,260 days. 3 different kinds of references. 7 references in 3 ways. Time, times, and dividing of time. 42 months. 1,260 days. And they're all the same period of time. Let me show you tonight. 1,260 days is referred to in Revelation 11:3 and in Revelation 12:6. 7 references, more than any other time prophecy in the Bible. Now God tells us both in Numbers 14:34 and in Ezekiel 4:6, I have given you a day for a year. In prophecy, when we have a day, it equals a year. You'll see how this works now. It works every time without fail in every time prophecy in the Bible. As we look in Genesis at the time of the flood, watch this. Chapter 7, verses 11 and 24. Now, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month. By the way, let me pause here. You know, have you ever heard people say, oh, well, they didn't reckon time back then like we reckon time today? Do you see what we have here? Months, days, years. God's always reckoned this time, and next week we're going to see how and why he reckons it the way he does. He says, on that 17th day of the 2nd month in the 600th year of Noah's life, all the fountains of the great deep were broken up, and the windows of heaven were open, and the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. How many of you thought the flood was only 40 days and 40 nights? A lot of times people think that. No, it rained 40 days and 40 nights, but the waters prevailed for 150 days. Now watch. If we go next to the next chapter, chapter 8 of Genesis, and the waters returned from off the earth continually, and after the end of 150 days the waters were abated, and the ark rested in the, watch this, 7th month on the 17th day of the month upon the mountains of Ararat. Now it's math time, guys. I hope you like mathematics. It's a simple one, though. The flood started the 2nd month, the 17th day of the 600th year of Noah's life. So I'm just putting it down 2/17, like we could do February 17th. Wasn't called February, but it was the 2nd month. And the floods lasted for 150 days and ended on the 7th month, the 17th day of that same year. So if you take and subtract 2/17 from 7/17, you find that that's 5 months. Okay? And 5 months equals 150 days. It said 150 days the water was there. Biblically speaking, a month has 30 days in it. Now, we've got them that go 28, 29, 30, 31. You know, we kind of bounce them around a little bit. But the lunar month is a little less than 30 days. It's 29 point some days. That's why we interject that leap year thing in there. Biblically speaking, when you're figuring prophecy, you put the 30 days to a month. Now watch this. It's very simple. We have 42 months. There's 30 days in a month. 30 times 42 equals 1,260. Don't have to be a mathematician, do you? Very simple, basic math. The Bible was written so anybody and everybody can understand it. A time times and a half a time. Remember in Daniel chapter 4, Nebuchadnezzar went mad for 7 times, it says, or 7 years. We find that a time equals a year. Now watch this. We have 30 days, 12 months in a year. That would be 360 days in a year. Okay? One time would be 360 days. Times, or 2 times, would be 720. And a half a time, or a dividing of time, would be 180. And you add them up, and guess what? It's 1,260 days. 1,260 days, and I've given you each day for a year, is 1,260 years. We've got a time prophecy here, friends. A very important one that we'll be looking at quite intensely next week sometime. So now let's go to Revelation 13 and let's look at something about this power that was to arise and to rule undisputed for 1,260 years. Revelation chapter 13. That's on page 1227 in your seminar Bible. Revelation chapter 12 and chapter 13 and beginning with verse 1. And I stood upon the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea. What's the sea represent? People, multitude. So here is a power, a beast power, which all Bible theologians agree that it is the same as the little horn of Daniel chapter 7. It is what is generally referred to today as the Antichrist power. And it arises up out of all of these peoples, and it says it has 7 heads and 10 horns. Sound familiar? And notice. And upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon his head the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard, and his feet were as the feet of a bear. These beasts sounding familiar? And his mouth is the mouth of a lion, and the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and his great authority. You notice something here? John sees these same beasts, but he sees them in a reverse order. He's got one beast that comprised this totality of this one, but he's giving them in a reverse order. Why is that? Because Daniel's down here 600 years before Jesus, and John's down here 100 years after Jesus, writing Revelation, approximately. And so they're looking at it from 2 different directions. And Daniel says, I saw a lion, a bear, a leopard, and a dragon-like beast. And John, looking back, says, I saw this beast that was a composite beast, and it was like a leopard and a bear, and the dragon gave him his power and his seat and his great authority. And he had the mouth of a lion. Now watch. And I saw one of his heads as it were wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. And they worshipped the dragon which gave power unto the beast. And they worshipped the beast, saying, Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him? I gave a poster away the other night of this beast, the dragon. Who is the dragon?
Satan.
Satan. Revelation 12, that great red dragon called the devil and Satan. So this is frightening, friends. Pay attention to this. Look back at that again in verse 4. And they worshipped who? The dragon, or the devil. And they worshipped the dragon and gave power unto the beast. You see, if you worship this beast power, this Antichrist power, if you're caught up with that power, you're caught up with the devil himself.
Yes.
This is important to understand, very important.
And yes.
It says they worship the beast, saying, "Who is like unto the beast, and who is able to make war with him?" There was given unto him a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies, and power was given unto him to continue 42 months. And he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name and his tabernacle and them that dwell in heaven, and was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. That's an awesome description we have here. You may not have realized it, but tonight we've already looked at 17 signs that identify the Antichrist. 17 different ones. But first I want to give you some parallel points and see what we've looked at so far. First, the one in Daniel chapter 7 and the one in Revelation 13 are the same. They are both blasphemous powers. They both make war with the saints. They both speak great things. Both arise after the fall of Rome. Both of them are described by the same beast. Both are given the power to reign supreme for 1,260 years. And at the end of the 1,260 years, this power was to be wounded and taken captive and God's people delivered. I want to share this one with you. We didn't read in 13:10. And he that leadeth into captivity should go into captivity, and he that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here's the patience and the faith of the saints. So these are the parallel points. The dragon gave him his power, his seat, and his great authority. The dragon is the devil or Satan. These powers arise at the same time. They occupy the same territory. They reveal the same character. They perform the same function. They endure for the same length of time. And they meet the same fate. Therefore, of necessity, they must be the same identical power. But who is this power? Now, the first evening we read this quote from Hippolytus, a Christian that lived back at the time of ancient Rome. I want to share it again tonight. The golden head of the image and the lioness denoted the Babylonians. You see, I'm not presenting anything any different to you tonight than the Christian church has believed from the beginning there. The shoulders and arms of silver and the bear represented the Persians and the Medes. The belly and thighs of brass of the leopard meant the Greeks, who held the sovereignty from Alexander's time. The legs of iron and the beast dreadful and terrible express the Romans, who hold the sovereignty at the present. The toes of the feet, which were part clay and part iron, and the 10 horns, were emblems of the kingdom that are yet to rise. The other little horn that grows up among them meant the Antichrist in their midst. And the stone that smites the earth, that was in Daniel 2, and brings judgment upon the world, was Christ. He lived at the time of Rome. He understood this to be referring to these various things that we've looked at tonight. 17 identifying points that I want to share with you. We'll look at these points individually, each one at a time, in an upcoming meeting. First of all, it was to arise immediately after Rome. Second, it was to be diverse or different. It was to ascend the throne of the Caesars. It was to receive power and authority from Rome. It was to destroy 3 kingdoms in its rise to supremacy. It would maintain its power for 1,260 years. It would eventually receive a deadly wound after that 1,260 years, but the wound would be healed, and this power would persecute God's people, speak great things. It would be guilty of blasphemy. It would think to change times and laws. It will exalt itself above God. It would claim to be God. And it will have the incriminating number 666 that we haven't looked at tonight. We will another night. It is an amazing worldwide power. All the world wondered after this beast. And it deceives multitudes into receiving its mark. These are the points. We will study one at a time. Now, an early reformer, Andreas Osiander, back in 1524 at the Reformation. I want to share this quote from him, just part of it with you tonight. I prove to my listeners, solely from the Holy Scriptures, who this Antichrist is, simply by lining up all the texts referring to him, and did not need to give any additional comments on them. He didn't have to give any additional comments like I'm going to, because when he gave those points, they were living at the time that this power was in its strongest, and everybody knew who it was. But history has become strangely silent on this over the last several generations. I want us to look at something before we close tonight in Revelation 13. Verse 16. It says, and he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. You see, economic boycott is on its way. You won't be able to buy or sell unless you receive this mark of the beast. You won't be able to buy and sell unless you worship the beast and remember who you will really be worshiping. And so this is what's coming. But it gets even worse than that. Look at verse 15 there. It says, and he had power to give life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause that as many as would not worship the image of the beast should be what?
Killed.
He would be killed. There's a death decree coming that we talked about the other evening, that we must be willing to stand in opposition to this compromised religion. Revelation 14 verses 9 and 10 give the most awesome warning to be found anywhere in the Scriptures. Let's look at that closing tonight. The third angel followed, them saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand, the same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God, which is poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. I don't know of a more awesome warning anywhere in the Bible. To receive the mark of the beast is to be lost. To worship the beast is to be lost. Do you think that it is important that we know who this Antichrist power is so that we can stand against it? So one night we're going to spend the whole night doing this. The main thing I want you to remember tonight, what says the Bible, the blessed Bible to me? The teachings of men so often mislead me. What says the Bible, the blessed Bible to me? This my only question be, what says the Bible, the blessed Bible to me? It doesn't matter what men's theories are. It doesn't matter about anything else, as long as we know what the Word of God says. Make that your foundation, and you will stand strong through any storm that comes. The good news is that the court shall be seated. They shall take away his dominion to consume it and destroy it forever. Yeah, that power is there. But you know the great good news, have you ever bought a book and gone to the back and read the last few pages first? Know what's in the book? Some people do that, you know. Well, I read the end of the book, and guess what? We win! The Antichrist loses. The devil has great wrath because he knows that he has but a short time. Then the kingdom and the dominion and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, and his kingdom is what kind?
Everlasting.
An everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. Jesus is coming very soon. He's coming not just to take us home. That's the main reason. But in the process of that, it is to destroy sin and sorrow and sickness and death and suffering, and to put this world back to where He wanted it to be in the beginning.
Amen.
With
Jesus.
Adam and Eve. You ever wondered how God created this earth? I intend to be there to watch Him when He recreates it and puts it back the way it is.
Amen.
For we
Thank
must
you,
be
Jesus.
found faithful, ready and waiting. Watch ye therefore, for in such an hour as you think not, the Son of Man cometh. Let us pray together. Father, we do want to thank you tonight. We thank you so much for your love, mercy, for your watch care over each of us. We thank you for your word that you've given to us to be a light unto our feet, a lamp unto our path, that we can know the right ways in which to walk. And I pray, Father, that as your ancient servant said, that you would help us to hide your word in our hearts that we might not sin against you. Keep us faithful, Lord, until the coming of your Son. And daily give us an ever closer relationship with you, is our prayer. In Jesus' precious name. Amen.